since I was a kid, I've always had this innate sense of finances. I really don't know where it came from. I never had a frame of reference for it. I wasn't working a job when I was like 5, but I always kind of understood the value of money. And I guess at the same time, I was also always interested in money. And that kind of led me to investing. I was watching Graham Stephan when I was like 11, 12 years old. And so I've known about investing for a while, but for the longest time, I guess I didn't know much in regards to it, if that makes any sense. I've known about it, but I'm not the most knowledgeable in the field. And up until recently, I didn't really have too much of a plan on things, and I didn't really know anything regarding looking at and analyzing companies. All I would do is just, I had some type of thesis, but it was literally just like, oh, I'll buy this stock because I think this is going to be good, or I bought this stock because this just came out. And that was really it. And there wasn't much thought process other than that. And I've made some money, but I've also lost a good chunk of money. And really, the biggest win that I've ever had was just because COVID happened, and I happened to buy Microsoft, who also happens to be an insanely incredible company. I bought them at like $155 a share when they had dropped from like high 200s, maybe even around 300, and then they went up to 300, and I sold them for a nice quick profit. And looking back on it, I wish I had never sold them. I don't know why I did that, especially being a dividend growth investor. I wish I would have kept Microsoft. That would have been amazing, right? That would be like 5 years of returns and compounding, just that I would have under my belt already. All that to say, it's good to have a plan, and although I still have a lot to learn, I've developed somewhat of a plan, and I'd like to share that today. So, as I said earlier, my main focus is dividend growth. One day I want to live off my dividends. There are a lot of pros and cons to every investing strategy, but I really believe in the pros of dividend growth. And not only that, but I truly believe I'm disciplined enough to be able to consistently put in money every month, or at least, every year throughout the next 20, 30, 40 years. And on top of that, I'm also comfortable enough to take a little bit of a lower paycheck, I guess, in the early stages to make a lot more later in life. I know a lot of people prefer growth instead because you start out with more, or some people like to start with growth so they can make more money quickly and then throw that money into dividends. I'm just going to stick straight to dividend growth. That's what I'm comfortable with that. And so with that, I'm really only going to be investing into dividend growth companies. Now, something that I've been battling with a little bit, and maybe this just shows I lack some discipline, but there is a portion of me that does want to invest in the companies whenever I just think there is like it's at an amazing deal. Who doesn't love a good deal, right? So 95% of my portfolio is probably going to be in dividend growth, but there might be a small portion that doesn't invest in a company, or like invest into companies that don't even pay dividends. Like Google, for example, just I bought a couple shares of Google not that long ago, even though they don't pay dividends at all, because it just seemed like an amazing deal. And there might be some of that thrown in there. That's that's something I'm gonna have to figure out myself, and maybe I'll get into companies like that for some quick money, and then I can just sell out of them fairly quickly and use some of that to just throw into more dividend paying companies. But all that to say, for the most part, I'm just going to be investing into companies that pay dividends and grow dividends consistently, that I believe have a wide moat and have a path forward that they can continue, that will allow them to continue growing their dividends for the next 5, 10, 20, 30, for years to come. And so, again, in a similar vein, I'll sell out of some positions that don't really fit my goals. Like I was saying earlier, I've been investing for a long time, but again, I didn't really know much until fairly recently. And so I have positions that I'm still in my account that are either just down in general because they probably weren't the greatest positions, or straight up lost like 100% of the value. Don't ask me why I'm still in some of them. Maybe there's a part of me that believes it'll go back up and I can at least make a little bit of money. But at the very least, to make my whole account look a bit prettier, I plan on selling out of definitely the 100% losers. And there are a couple positions that I'm in just that haven't lost everything, but just because I wanted to put some money somewhere. Like Ford, for example. Ford pays a dividend, and they're a company that's been around for forever. But honestly, I don't really want to keep my money with them. So my whole plan, honestly, is to just kind of wait for a dividend payment right after they're at the very least break even. I'd like to just break even on Ford. I'm down a little bit. But yeah, I have a couple $100 in Ford, and I'll sell out of that, for example. I feel like I've just kind of said the same thing over and over. Anyways, sell out of companies that don't fit my goals. This will allow me to hone in on a smaller basket of stocks. I've seen a lot of people, especially recently, because I've been just interested in investing all across the board, and I've been watching a ton of different YouTube channels. And one thing that I've started to see a little bit more recently is people have fairly concentrated portfolios, and it's kind of weird, to be honest. I've always thought you're supposed to diversify, and that's why everyone sticks to like the S&P 500. But a lot of people really like having maybe just only 10, 12, 15 stocks in their portfolio. Joseph Carlson, if anybody watches him, he only has like 10, which is pretty nuts to think about. But honestly, I kind of like that idea. I don't know if I'll go down to only 10, but I definitely want to hone in on a smaller basket of stocks that I can will allow me to monitor them easier, so I can maintain positions that are of the highest quality, I guess you could say. Now, there are still several stocks that I want to get into that I'm just not in yet, but I'm definitely going to slow down on the buying of a bunch of different stocks because I think they may be a good idea. I know Nathan Robert. I've talked about Nathan Robert. If you don't know about him, go check out his channel. He's amazing. But I used to watch some of his videos, and literally he would just go over stocks, and some of I would just pick out a couple every so often, or like every video or whatever. I'm like, you know what? I like how that sounds. I'm gonna throw some money into there. So that's gonna stop. That's coming to an end right now. Like I said in my last video, there are two stocks that I'm looking at right now. Well, really there are a few different stocks, but outside of those, I'm not just going to be throwing money everywhere, getting like 25, 30 positions in my portfolio. Now, lastly, I want to only invest whenever there is some form of metric indicating that it is undervalued or at the very least reasonably valued. So whether that's the PEG ratio being below 1, or I run some form of valuation model on it, or maybe I use dividend yield theory, I want to be investing when there is something that tells me this isn't a terrible price, because I've found firsthand how, I guess, valuable getting in at a reasonable price is. Because there was a stock that I put some money into literally right at the high, basically, and it dropped down a good chunk, and then it went sideways for a little while, and then it ended up coming back up to break even, but that was over the course of like 3 years. So people talk about, I can't remember what exactly the quote is, or who said it, but investing at something along the lines of like, investing at too high of a price can very significantly diminish your gains. And so I'd like to avoid some of that. So I also know that stocks aren't going to always be undervalued. I understand that. I am comfortable with paying a little bit of a premium if I think something is at the very least reasonably priced, because I want to get that little extra time in uh, with dividends and compounding, and I don't want to just be sitting on my hands. So I am going to be waiting a little bit longer. So instead of throwing money into something every time I get paid, I'm gonna wait a little bit longer and throw, so I can stack up a little bit of money and throw a little bit more into stocks when I think they're at a better valuation. But at the same time, I'm I know it doesn't come that often. So again, reasonably priced, I'm willing to pay for that. But I feel like I'm repeating myself over and over. Let's just do a quick summary of everything real quick. Main focus is dividend growth. I want to be investing in companies that grow dividends, ideally that have a very strong, wide moat, and that I think will be around for years to come. Again, basically only investing in dividend growth companies. I want to sell out of positions that I got in when I was younger and really don't fit my goals, so that I can hone into a small basket of stocks and basically choose the best of the best companies. And I really only want to be investing when obviously it's a good time to invest. So there might have been a little bit of rambling in this video. I think this will just be one of those ones that's leaning a little bit more into the commentary. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. If you did, consider commenting, consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. In my last video, I talked about a couple of the stocks that I'm actually looking to get into. So if you're curious, you can go check that out. I'll put that up on the screen. A couple of people commented some stocks they wanted me to look at. I think that'd be a fun video idea. So if you have any stocks you'd want me to do some analysis on, please let me know in the comments. Good luck on your investing journey.